What's up, guys? It is time for another Bandai Tamashii Nation's SH Figuarts review, but this time we're going back to Star Wars with a figure that has been shown for a long time. It's finally out. Finally got my hands on him. We're talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi, so this is Episode 4, Star Wars, Original Star Wars, A New Hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi. He comes in a bit of a thicker box because he has some extra stuff in here, but in terms of the overall package, we've got same kind of Star Wars Figuarts box we've seen before. It's not an exclusive, so it's got the open window on the front so you can see all the stuff in there, and then the backside shows some of the extra features and accessories that he comes with and just general product shots. So let's pull this guy out and take a look. Alright guys, and here he is out of the packaging, and this figure is interesting to say the least. I have been very, very eager to get a hold of him, but I've also been pretty worried about just a lot in terms of what this figure has to offer because he's encumbered so much by his sculpt and the robes. And then of course there's the face sculpt, and it's looked a lot worse in certain pictures than it has in others, and I've just been in general rather worrisome that this figure wasn't necessarily going to live up to my expectations. And he sort of does and he sort of doesn't. There's just some oddities going on with him. I do think that he is probably the best Obi-Wan Kenobi that I've got. That doesn't necessarily say a great deal because we don't have tons. There's only one other 6-inch scale. Well, 2 if you count the Ghost Obi-Wan. But this figure has some interesting things going for it, but it's also going to be the first figure that I actually have to take apart in order to really show you what's going on. So we're going to get into articulation first, and you'll see what I mean. Alright, now for articulation, this is going to be kind of like a two-part deal because he is, as you can see, covered in these robes. He's got the outer robe, he's got the inner robe, the under robe, whatever you want to call it. And as you might imagine, that definitely hinders articulation here. There's just no way around it, unless of course it was soft goods, and you know we're not going to get that. Soft goods in SH Figuarts is not incredibly common. So I'm going to show you what he can do in the robes, and then we're going to take the robe off and I'll show you what he's capable of if he didn't have this. So you can swivel the head up and down, pretty good range of motion there. Arms can go out. There is kind of a butterfly joint in here to allow him to move his arms a little bit better. You might have to drop the arm down to be able to push it inward. I don't have any issues doing that. It's just something that I keep having to do. Then you can swivel them all the way around. They do rotate all over. Bicep swivel, you can see there that joint popping out there. We've got the standard Figuarts elbow. We've got wrist rotation, hinges, all that good stuff in terms of what you'd expect to get with a Figuarts. Of course, these robes are still going to hinder articulation here as well. We do have a waist twist, but again, he's only going to twist so far because he's still in the confines of this robe. The legs are articulated, but he's covered in these really, really heavy plastic sheets, basically, so he can kick forward, he can kick out, and then he does have knee joints, but, you know, you're not going to display him like that. And you can rotate, rock, hinge, toe hinge, all that good stuff. So he's fairly articulated. He has everything you would kind of expect to find in an SH Figuarts, but his overall look is dictated by the design and the sculpt, and that of course is limiting articulation. Now you can take this outer robe off, and while you're never going to do this for your display, I can show you what he's actually doing underneath that robe. So to do that, basically you just have to pop the arms out, and they come right out. No craziness there. And you can see, you know, he's fully sculpted, he's fully detailed underneath. Put the arms back in and you can better see what's actually going on here. Pop those down. And, you know, there's Obi-Wan without his outer robe, and he definitely does look kind of wonky there. But you can see here's the butterfly joint, and it looks really, really bad on the backside. But of course, this isn't meant to be seen, so I'm not gonna complain about that. And then you can see more about what's going on with these arms here and how it's meant to move, and what I'm talking about by dropping that arm down so you can fold it inside this joint here. And then his waist twist, I mean, it's a full waist twist. He's got movement, but that cloak is just going to hinder it. Of course, that doesn't really matter with the legs or anything like that. He can still do all of that stuff, but these pieces here are just really going to get in the way eventually. So, you know, it's kind of a situation where, yeah, you can do this, but you're never actually going to. Well, you might. I don't know what your display is going to look like, but mine certainly isn't. So he is fully articulated, but the sculpt just hinders it to a tremendous degree. So I've talked a lot about sculpt so far, but in terms of articulation. Now, in terms of the actual sculpt, for sculpt's sake, I am fairly happy with this. It definitely has a big caveat in terms of the face and the head sculpt, but the overall figure itself, I think is pretty solid. I really dig the inner under robes that they've got going on here. There's a lot of weathering on his tunic in there. I think it looks really nice. We've got the belt sculpted on there with the hook for his saber. We're pretty used to these kind of arms in Figuarts for Jedi at this point, and I like them. They've got the inner robe sculpted in there as well. So there's not tons and tons to talk about, but I think that his overall body sculpt is fine. He is what a lot of people consider to be a traffic cone. So he basically is just one big fixture piece. You're not really going to move his legs around too much. At least I don't plan to. You know, this isn't an Obi-Wan that's supposed to be dynamic. This is A New Hope Obi-Wan. This is, you know, end of life Obi-Wan. Spoiler alert, I suppose. So he looks the part, and I think that's fine. We do have the hood on the back, and there is an extra hood for this particular figure. It just pegs on to the outer robe, and I'll show that when we do accessories. The big thing for this figure, and my big pain point, my worry point when, you know, I was waiting to get him, was the head sculpt, was the face sculpt. And I do think that for the most part, it's okay. It's definitely not perfect. I prefer it to Black Series still, but it's definitely not perfect. In some ways, I can see Alec Guinness, and in some ways, I just see an old guy. I really think that they missed out on the paint applications, not necessarily with the facial details, but when it comes to the hair, mustache, and beard. There should be some gray in there. I really, really wish that there was more gray to be found in this hair. It's just too white, and I really think that is a big problem for it. The overall face sculpt, I think, is pretty decent. And again, it's mostly one of those things where certain angles, I can see it dead on. I really have a hard time seeing Alec Guinness, but from the side and from an angle, I can see him pretty well. So it's definitely not perfect. I'm not going to make any excuses for it. It is a bit of a letdown in terms of the face, but in some ways it's good, some ways it's bad. You know, your mileage may vary on that. Some people will like it, some people seem to not like it so far. I think the big miss for the figure in terms of a look and feel type of thing is definitely on the paint for the hair and the facial hair. That seems to be an odd miss. They could have easily done that. The rest of the paint apps on the figure, you know, there aren't tons. It's a Figuarts, Star Wars Figuarts. They don't have tons and tons of paint apps. They're pretty well done. All the shading on his inner tunic is really good. The belt's really good. So I'm okay there. It's just a little bit lacking on that face that would have absolutely elevated this figure to a whole other level. Now for accessories, this guy has a decent amount. He doesn't have tons and tons, but I think he's got it where it counts. And you can see that I have swapped out the hood already. So we've got the original one here, just the hood down. And these guys peg into ports on the outer robe. So you just pop it out, and there's some ports there, and it has two little pegs, and you just pop them in, and it sits right in there. I've had pretty good luck moving them in and out so far, and I think that this hood actually sits a little better for me personally. Probably going to end up displaying him like this as well. For some reason, I think he looks a little more Alec Guinness-y with this hood up. We'll see. Time will tell on that. He does, of course, have his lightsaber, and this guy pops apart in the middle to allow you to more easily put it into his hands, and he comes with a pair of hands for holding sabers. These are the kind of angled style hands, so he can more easily hold the saber with his long sleeves coming down. So I think that works really well. We do have a unignited saber. You can pop that on his belt if you so choose. We have got a hand so you can do like a force wave. There's just one of these, you know, like if he's in Mos Eisley. We've got some open palm relaxed style hands, and then of course we have the fist hands that you've seen so far in this review. He includes a few other accessories as well that are very situational and kind of scene specific. So we have got an extra face. And this is exactly what you think it is. This is the moment of death Obi-Wan face with his eyes shut. So you just pop the face off like any other Figuarts and pop that guy on. And then the last thing that he comes with is one that I don't know that you're ever really going to display him with, because it doesn't make sense canonically. But for figure photography, this is kind of an interesting thing. We have got his robes after he dies. So, you know, pop this down on the ground, throw the saber in there, and have Vader stomp on it or something like that to, you know, kind of show that he has passed on, so to speak. So that's an interesting one. Definitely not something I personally need, but I do very much see the appeal. It's just a big piece of brown plastic, but it does have a lot of sculpted detail on it. There is a lot of wrinkling going on there. It's even got sculpted detail on the bottom side. So they definitely went to some trouble to make this. And for a quick comparison, because why not, here is our new figure, obviously, next to the Black Series Obi-Wan. And for me, it's a night and day difference. While I do have gripes with this figure, I mean, it's obvious I don't think he's perfect. He's a far cry from what the Black Series offering is. They're just on two different levels, so it's unfair to compare them for me, but it's just, here's what they look like side by side. So overall, I am happy with this figure. but happy with a few caveats. He definitely has limited articulation, which I fully understand. And, you know, it doesn't really bother me from a display standpoint. It's not going to ruin my display plans for this figure, but it's still a thing. It's still something to talk about. Half of his articulation from the waist down is almost unusable just because of the fact that he's covered by multiple layers of rather rigid plastic. The face sculpt definitely leaves a little bit to be desired. It's not perfect. It is better for me personally than the Black Series, but I do think that they missed the mark on the hair color for sure, and there's just something about him from certain angles that doesn't really look like Alec Guinness, but sometimes it does. I do think he looks better with the hood up than with it down, so we're going to try to work that out in my display. And overall, the rest of the stuff he comes with is pretty good. He doesn't come with tons and tons, but what he does have I think works really well. A decent spread of hands. I do like that death scene face that he has, and I do like the gimmicky crumpled up robe. That's fun. It's good for action figure photographers. I'm probably never going to use it. I mean, I'm going to take a few pictures with it for sure, but it's certainly not going to be in my cases or anything like that. But it's definitely fun for people who want to actively use that. So that's going to do it for this look at the Star Wars SH Figuarts Obi-Wan Kenobi figure from Bandai Tamashii Nations. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time, guys.